Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. You read it just as I wrote it. Good to see you. I want to share with you a little bit about how we're going to do this today. So Paul and I talking about two different subjects, but there's a common thread here. We're both talking about things that you can do to improve the value of your business. And that's the whole point of today then. So many of you know that I sell businesses. It's quite simple as it works. Working for the sellers, typically, representing them. They are my clients. The buyers of businesses, they are our customers. We pledge to provide them with transparent information so they can make an educated decision about whether they want to buy a given business or not. So that's what we do. I've been doing this for more than 2 decades, helping people buy, sell businesses. Have a lot of fun doing it. Work with folks all around the country, but because of where we are, it tends to be more in the greater Charlotte metro area, and that's perfectly fine. VR Business Sales is a franchise organization. We're one of the top offices in that chain of units around North America then. A little more on that in a little bit. I often get calls, as I did this morning, from someone who called me up and said, and in this particular case, a family member is very ill and decided they need to sell the business and need to be able to move on from the business. And so we're talking about like right away. Want to sell here, get it on the market by the end of the year, and get out of the business within 6 months after that. I could help those people, and that's probably, again, 9 out of 10 of the calls that we get. But an ideal client is someone I get to talk with a few years in advance, because then we can talk about things that they can do to improve the value of the business, make it more attractive to more potential buyers, and to be able to command a higher price, better terms in the sale of the business. So what I want to share with you today are the 6 steps that I've identified that people can take as business owners to improve the value of their business, to make it more sellable. And if we have some time, I'm going to throw in a bonus 7th step as well. So we'll go along the way. If there's questions along the way on any of these, then we'll address them too. So, number one thing you can do is minimize your role in the business as a business owner. Now that's hard to do for many small business owners. They started off heads down, hands on, sleeves rolled up, nose to the grindstone, use all the metaphors you want. It's hard work when you're starting a business. You're doing something maybe you already know, love to do, but it's just you initially. And maybe over time you bring on one employee, and maybe you bring on a second or a third. Maybe you get to the point where you have a general manager working for you, kind of in between you and the other employees. But the key thing to make a business attractive to a potential buyer is for you to remove yourself from some of the day-to-day operational, technician-related things in your business. Maybe have other people in your organization that you're able to delegate things out to. Now, it's rare that we have small business owners who are indeed absentee owners. We don't expect that. We don't expect to see that. But an ideal situation is where the manager, the owner of the business, has reduced their role to the point that their main focus is managing marketing. Maybe they have the responsibility for payroll, the financials. As you as a small business owner, you don't want to necessarily give up that kind of control there. But you want to reduce your role to the extent you can. And that can become through delegation, through automating different systems and processes in the business, then growing it so that you remove yourself. People aren't looking, when they're looking at businesses for sale, they're not looking to buy a job. They're looking to buy a business. And most business buyers think of that as something where, yes, I want to be involved, but I don't want the business to depend on me. And so you want to work towards reducing your role in the business. Second thing I want you to do is finesse your financial reporting. And here's what I mean by that. But let's use an example of the extreme that I fortunately rarely come into, but it does happen, where the individual calls me up, says, I need to sell my business. Okay, tell me about how the business works and so on. Can you send me financial reports on the business? Well, I have a box of receipts, and literally that was the conversation we had, a box of receipts, and I take them to my accountant at the end of the year, and he prepares and files my taxes for me. Well, do you have an idea what your revenue is this year? Well, let me look at my checkbook, and I could probably tell you how much I have in the bank. Okay, I have had those conversations, and I cannot help those people. A good business that's attractive to a buyer is one where the financial reporting is up to date, readily accessible. QuickBooks, there's many other tools that are available to small business owners these days. Use those. I've had some clients who use spreadsheets. Okay, that may work for them to stay on top of things, but it still doesn't communicate a professional way of running your business, and it's not very trustworthy looking as well. So invest in the kind of things that provide good reports, and know your numbers as well. What is your profit margin? What's your inventory turnover ratio? There's lots of things that you need to know to be operating a business well. Nick can help you there in the planning there on those things. Todd can certainly help in looking at those financials in. We have resources in this room to help folks out along those lines too. Third thing that you should do to help prepare, minimize the financial noise. Now, if you're a typical small business owner in America, you may be putting through a few personal things in the business. And perhaps it's things like owner's life insurance, owner's health insurance. Good stuff, reasonable, you should do it. Take advantage of the tax advantages of that. Sometimes you might be having a personal use of the company-owned vehicle, and you just go ahead and expense it all. I don't have any problems with that either. I mean, that's between you, your accountant, and you're conscious to some extent on that, but I don't have any issues with that. As long as you can document those kind of things, and be able to prove it to a potential buyer, hey, we'll take into account. Now, we've seen some crazy things out there where people have maybe purchased a boat that was not even used in the business and then fully depreciated it in the business. We've seen all kinds of crazy things like that. But if you can document those things and be able to prove them to a potential buyer, we can typically take those into account. But if you really want to optimize the value of your business for a potential sale, minimize that kind of noise. A buyer, and more importantly, the buyer's lender, to potentially buy your business and finance it, they're going to want to look at what's the core financials of that business. They're going to go to the tax returns. What's the revenue? What's the net income that's produced that seller paid taxes on? That's mainly what they're going to focus on. Plus, any owner's salary that's paid. We'll also look at interest expense, depreciation. Those are things that we can count towards the cash flow generated in the business. But when it becomes really shaky is when people start putting a lot of other stuff through there, and maybe intentionally to show a net loss on their tax returns. Okay, hey, saves you money, I get it. But it doesn't make the business look good when it's time to sell. So take the time then to clean things up, pay your taxes then, with the advantage being that you have a more sellable business if you're talking about within the next 2 or even 3 years there. Questions about any of that so far?
I'm going to go back
yes,
to
sir, Chad.
Reducing the role. You said you should delegate, automate wherever appropriate. Where really the business owner is focusing on managing and marketing?
Managing and marketing often is the combination that makes more sense. Okay. For a business owner then. Okay. That they're overseeing the overall operations of the business. They may even have a general manager between them and the employees, as I shared before. But maybe they're also involved in the marketing, the promotions. Maybe the owner even has a sales role. Okay? Maybe so then. And now that may limit us in terms of finding a potential buyer to someone who also has sales experience. So even if you can extract yourself from that role, the better then. But minimizing the role of being a technician, the 40, 50 hour a week employee then. That's really what we want to see the owners reduce that role in. Does that help there?
Yep.
Yes?
Sorry, I took it back.
Mm-hmm.
Am I simplifying too much to say that person really means that the business won't fall apart?
Yep.
When the owner leaves?
Yep. Here's an example. Let's say you and a spouse want to go on vacation to New Zealand, and you're going to take 3 weeks to go do that. And you lose your phone while you're there. What's going to happen to your business in that 3-week period? Can the business continue to operate without you? I don't mind. I love small business owners who are involved in their business on a regular basis. But if they can answer that question of, I can be gone 3 weeks and the business continues to operate, don't miss a beat, we've got people in place, things continue to operate, that's a more sellable business.
Makes sense.
That's the more sellable business. Does that help there? Good questions. Any others? Let's go on to the next one. Oh, I already did that there. Modernize the systems. Well, here we're talking about things like QuickBooks. We're talking about CRM systems that allow you to manage your customer database, to be able to send out regular emails to them, email campaigns, be on top of those kind of things. The more you can create the systems and the processes to help you run your business so that the business is not running you, the more attractive that business is. Here's another example. We're not talking about just computer systems, although Paul's going to talk a little bit about computer systems in a little bit. Could be things like an employee manual. If you've got 5 or more employees, you should probably have an employee manual to help provide guidance and direction on the policies that you have in your business. And if for no other reason, do that so that a potential buyer can look at that and say, wow, they've thought of everything. They've built an infrastructure that's going to allow me to take over this business and grow it further. So it's the systems, the processes, the documentation, all of that to have a business that everybody knows how things work and how things can run going forward. I'm working on I have a retail business for sale right now. I can't describe the details of what kind of business it is, but the owners created training videos for their about a dozen employees they have. And so that they're like 5-minute snippets that the owners recorded so that she can hands-on train new employees on how the business is operated, and not just how reports to fill out or forms to fill out, but how to greet customers, what words you say. Think of Chick-fil-A, right? And there's a script there. She's got a script there, she trains people on it, and then she sends them the video link so it can reinforce what she's taught them then. And that is there, and that will last after the business is sold as well. So those are examples. Create the systems, the processes, so the business can continue after you're gone. This one's not usually a big issue, but sometimes it is. Review your compliance with various laws, regulations. That's one of the first questions we ask people. Are you out of compliance if for any reason for tax purposes? You have some unpaid tax bills. Are there some legal permits that you've let lapse in the business? Are there other things related to compliance issues with the business? Are those up to date then? Stay on top of those then so that that's all clean beforehand. The worst thing we want to do is get under contract with a potential buyer and have something pop up that is previously undiscovered or undisclosed by the seller where, hey, there's this problem out there, because you got to get that cleaned up before you can sell the business. 6th step, know your value of your business. Even if you're talking about, I'm not going to sell my business for another 3 to 5 years, what is it worth? So what we do is we provide services where we will work with business owners, even if they are a few years away from wanting to sell their business. We'll look at their financials. I want to look at 3 years of tax returns, 3 years of profit and loss statements, a balance sheet. I want to hear about any of those personal expenses that may be going through the business. We can provide a broker opinion of value. We do that for a small fee in what we do. To provide that owner with a general idea of, if you were to sell that business today, here's the most likely selling price for the business. But if you know that in advance, and you also know what else you need to do to improve the value, you can set yourself a target figure that you want to be able to get for that business later on. Any questions about the 6 steps here so far? Yes, Shep.
I can take advice. I did well. My brother is in the automotive world, and he has been part of selling multiple businesses, but they sell to VCs, and then they hire somebody to take over the leadership role after they purchase the business. How different is it when you're selling to somebody who always has wanted a business like this? I've always wanted to be Jason, and I want his business. How different is that? Well,
it's a great question. Just to paraphrase in for those who may be watching on video then. So you're asking about small businesses sometimes can be sold to private equity or other venture capitalist firms then, or they could be sold to individuals then. The VCs, the private equity, they're looking for about the same thing. They're looking for something where the business doesn't depend on the owner. They're looking for things where there's good reporting, good financials. They're clearly described in. There's not a lot of noise in there. There's good systems. They love those kinds of businesses. Now, they're looking to go in there. They're going to look for opportunities to cut costs further, potentially. And that's sometimes not without some pain associated with that. So, but they like the same thing as any other small business buyer. They're looking for the same kind of thing then. Often the private equity ones, though, are looking for something that's especially where the owner's role is reduced, because they may be putting in their own manager who doesn't have necessarily an ownership stake in the business. Okay? Does that help there? Good questions. I think we got time. I'm going to share a bonus step here. Create a Goldilocks customer base. Let's talk about what that means. So, problems develop in business sales when the business has, say, a large percentage of its revenue comes from a small number of customers. Okay? In fact, we asked, do any of your customers account for more than 10% of your revenue? If so, that's going to be a problem. It doesn't mean it's an insurmountable obstacle, but it can be a problem, especially for the buyer's lender. They're afraid of businesses that have too much what we call customer concentration. So we want to diversify our customers to some extent. We don't want to be reliant, here in the city of Charlotte then, we don't want to be too reliant on Bank of America is my customer, and they represent 80% of my business, because boy, if that contract goes away, what do you have to sell then? You don't have much of anything. So we want diversity there. Also, we probably want a business that has a good, healthy mix of recurring customers and new. Not too much reliant on the new customers only, which they could go back to. They could go to a competitor who opens up their doors, but not too much reliance on recurring customers only. You want something that's a good, healthy mix in the between, and that's why I call it the Goldilocks customer base. Then, any questions on that?
Is there any kind of percentage split that you're looking for on recurring customers versus new customers?
There's not necessarily a split, an ideal split. It may depend more on the business. Like the retail client that I'm working with right now, they said, we got a lot of repeat customers. They said probably about a third of our customers are repeat. That's pretty good. That's a good core group. And if the other 2/3 are new customers, then, well, they may become repeat customers. I like that kind of mix for that particular business. So it may depend on the business there about what the mix should be.
I recently was talking to a business owner who had a telecom company down in South Carolina. He sold his company, but he got some advice from a Randy kind of person and said, hey, I really suggest that typically you go annual, year to year to year. He says if you can pull down your customers and lock them into a 2-year or even a 3-year contract, he says, I think we can get an exponential ROI on your business. And rather than selling it on a multiple of minimum 2, ideally 3x, you got a 7x on incentivizing his sales reps to go sell those 3-year contracts. He basically gave away the 3rd year.
Right.
But when he sold the company, every client was locked into a 3-year contract with his company. And he got a 7x multiple on it.
Appreciate Jason. That is important. If you do have some customer concentration, that is, we have a few customers that account for a large percent of the revenue, are they under some kind of a contract that is going to be transferable to a buyer? The longer the contract is that you may have with your customers, the more valuable the business is as well. I've had a lot of sellers say, "Hey, we've got these several customers and they've been with us for 20 years." Well, are they under any kind of contract, or could they leave at a moment's notice? Well, no, they could leave, if they wanted to. That's not quite as valuable. That's good that you get those recurring customers, but unless they're really signed up for you, that's not going to impress the buyer because they're afraid that something else is going to happen. I'll add another bonus step here also. It's not up here on the board though. If you have a business where you have a place, a location that you are leasing, it's important that you have probably at least 1.5 years, preferably 3 or more years remaining on the lease when it's time to sell. That business is more valuable. Buyers don't want to buy a business that they have fear shortly after I buy this, I might be thrown out on the curb and I have to find another place. I want that assurance of long-term ability to stay in that location. Jason.
I just want to hear you articulate the value of a name of a business.
Yeah.
If you got an ABC pressure washing business, are you buying the pressure washer or are you buying the name ABC?
Yeah.
thinking personally, you know, a company that's been in a market, in a business for maybe 20 plus years, let me expound upon that.
Yeah.
You're by the name, the
Yeah.
reputation versus the hardcore business.
So the value of buying a business because of its name versus buying the core business. Usually in small business world, the name is not quite as important as what the business does and the cash flow that it generates. Okay? Because in small business world, the name may not be as familiar to a broad audience. Larger the business, the more known the name is, certainly that adds more value to it. And you've got a business yourself where your name is on the business then also. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I sold a business recently where the owner's nickname was on the business. And it was fine because the nickname didn't necessarily mean anything to the buyers, but it just associated with a good, quality, well-run business. The buyer wanted to keep that name, okay? Even though it wasn't his name, it wasn't his nickname. So it depends on the business, but usually in small business world, Jason, the name may not matter quite as much, may not have as much value. Let's wrap up, share a little bit more about who we are then. So we work with sellers of businesses then. We serve the Charlotte area, Southeast US. We've been in the Charlotte area for 25 plus years. We've done hundreds of transactions. We do it in all kinds of categories, typically small businesses at 20 million in revenue and below. Real sweet spot for us, 1 to 5 million in revenue. We do a lot of things in that space. We're members of the International Business Brokers Association, the Carolina, Virginia Business Brokers Association. I am a certified business intermediary. Last I looked up, there were about only 8 of us within 100 miles who have that designation then. We were top 4 office the last few years in the VR system. I was the number 7 broker in the system the last few years too. And we love helping people explore business ownership options then. Thank you very much for your time here today. I appreciate it.
Randy.
So, Paul Blanchette with Nerds to Go. Tom, during the introduction, mentioned Nerd Whisperer. I kind of inherited that title because I am not a tech person at all. My background was in pharmaceutical sales management. My last gig that I had in that, I had 120 people reporting to me, which is absolutely crazy. I was traveling all the time and came across this franchise opportunity here in Charlotte. A couple years later, I met Chris. So we call him the Nerd Herder. I'm the Nerd Whisperer because I translate what the nerds say and put it into plain English and talk English to our customers. So that's how that got started. So Randy, as we were talking about how we were going to segue, we were like, how do we merge these two? And in a bus or a van ride home, we came upon the point of increasing your value of your business by making sure it's secure, whether before you buy it or after you sell it. Okay. So we're going to have a brief cybersecurity update because I know everyone got up this morning and was like, man, I just got to know more about that cybersecurity stuff out there. And then there's 2 case studies that we're going to review. Kind of shows you what we do as our customers look for from us. And then if there's any Q&A, we have it at the end, but feel free to jump in along the way. So. This is how my day started today. And yes, it's today. This was like 7:38 this morning, actually, because
somebody was really angry.
they didn't like technology, right?
Obviously, they could not see the van. It didn't stand out.
Right, it didn't stand out, right? So after I took the picture and I was kind of got everything done, we went to an office that I could kind of just relax a little bit. I was looking at the picture and I'm like, this is a lot like exactly what you're going to be talking about today, Paul. And that is things happen, right? And especially happen with your computer and your network. And these are the things that happen with your network. They will crash. They will. Things get dented and dropped, and all the rest of it. And they always come when you least expect it. I was 2 miles away from my exit. Traffic was moving perfectly. All of a sudden, the guy in front of me stops. I stop. the guy behind me stops. Well, then fortunately, there's a little NASCAR mentality guy that was out there, and he hit the car behind me without even touching his brakes. So, and that's how my van got messed up. So that's how life happens with cybersecurity as well. You open an email, you click on a link, and all of a sudden, your world changes, right? So, we're going to have a little bit of a pop quiz, just real easy stuff. So, percent of organizations that are targeted by ransomware attack in the last 12 months. Any guess?
80%.
80?
30.
30?
25.
25? Someone saw my presentation before? 74, yes. So yeah, I mean, this is how frequent this happens. You know, accidents on 485 all the day, or all the time, right? Same with cybersecurity. We are being, organizations are actually being targeted. Cyber attacks that start with an email. How much?
68%.
68%. Well, I feel like I'm 90.
10% of the emails I receive every day, I think.
91. So that is the number one way people get into your network. And why is that? Because you can train your employees all day long, 24/7, 365, and there is a small percentage of them that will click on an email, open an attachment, plug in a USB that they find in the parking lot, and that's how you get hacked. And it comes down to the humanness of your employees. So that's part of keeping your business secure, is making sure that you have those things in place so that when some things like that happen, your business stays up and running. So a couple more numbers. Small businesses who closed within 6 months after a data breach. How many think closed?
At least 30%.
45%.
30? 60.
Yeah.
It's expensive. It's expensive with downtime. It's expensive for ransomware. It's expensive to your customer base. I think it's like 33% somewhere, don't quote me on that, 33, 34% of customers will leave you as a business once they heard that you've had a data breach. Even if nothing gets taken, you got hacked. Customers will say, no, I'm not secure, I don't feel secure there, I'm moving my business elsewhere. So again, keeping your business secure adds value to what you're doing. Small businesses who suffered a ransomware attack with less than 100 employees. Everyone thinks that it's only Target and Wells Fargo and the government that gets hacked. Small businesses are getting hacked all the time as well. So what percent?
Wow. 85.
40.
65%.
It's a little lower. Yep, it's 37% of small businesses get hacked, that with less than 100 employees. So I mean, they come after, they target small businesses. Michelle.
What about the itty bitty ones, like less than 10 employees?
Same. I mean, it was all in this.
Okay.
It was in that. But everyone thinks that, again, small businesses, they don't think people or the cyber criminals are interested in them, because why would they come after me? Right? We have 5 employees. Those are the people that you have money in the bank. You have all this other stuff that they're going to come after, and it's a numbers game for them. They get 5 people with 5 businesses with 5 employees. That's a 25 employee company, right? So that they maximize that outcome by sheer numbers, right?
Well,
Chuck.
question for you. So if you, as a small business owner, you get an email and it's got an attachment on there. Are they getting access just when you click on the email itself to open up the body, or when you click on the attachment?
Mainly it's the attachment, or if it's an embedded link. So the one thing that you want to make sure of is when you get an email, and they're getting better and better and better with the quality of the logos that they put in there, check the domain of the person who sent it. And sometimes you got to be even like, they'll change one letter of the name on the domain, and you think you're clicking on John's Plumbing Company, and you're really clicking on John Plumbing's company, and it looked right? Yeah. But so you got to be very careful. If something looks weird, check your gut and go it that way. All right, so small businesses that have customers or have customer data that can be compromised.
That's got to be 85%.
Yes, 87% small businesses. So that's, again, it's not only your business, it's also your customers' data that is at stake as well. So again, the more you can secure your business, the more your customers' data is also secure. And the most important number, average revenue lost by a small company per year.
300K.
500,000.
100,000, upwards to $100,000. So again, that's real value right there. You secure your data, you secure your business, you're proficient and effective and efficient with what you're doing on a daily basis. You're putting money back in the bank. You're keeping money in the bank, not sending it. Yes, ma'am.
How much of that is, I see the lost downtime, but what about the ransom?
No, this is strictly downtime, and it depends on how long you're down. It's the data I saw from Gartner's was $5,600 a minute. It costs you a small business, and then they said most companies can go 3 hours on they can do 3 hours with certain apps. Yep.
I can't think of what you're getting.
Yeah, sorry.
You should never pay the ransom.
Never pay the ransom, yeah.
It's a 50-50 shot. The
Yep.
rule of thumb is if you get that, move on. You should have good backups. That is your ultimate protection.
Okay.
And I didn't want to step on.
No, you're good. You're good.
And I'm sure you're going to discuss this.
I am.
I have not seen this presentation, but this dovetails into the cybersecurity insurance. You absolutely need this.
Yeah.
And it's becoming widespread, and it's a no-brainer. You have insurance for your home, you have insured health, you better have cybersecurity insurance. It is worth it. It's worth every penny.
Yep.
So I can speak more about New York's laws, but I'm now learning much more about the two worst states are California and New York. They seem to blaze a trail with the craziness. But cybersecurity always leans towards the consumer, to the customer. And I know in New York, the Attorney General will come after you, and it is a hefty, hefty fine. 3 years of credit monitoring you have to provide for every customer. It is ugly. It is ugly. So, and North Carolina is moving right there. All the states will do this.
Yep.
And actually, again, California and New York kind of leapfrog each other. Like, oh, I can outdo you. I can make it worse for businesses to be in business. So, if you don't have cyber insurance, you should seriously consider it. And it doesn't matter. Like Paul said, any size. You have data. You have customers.
And that's generally very simple, me being in the insurance arena.
Right.
To add that into your general liability coverage.
Right.
Most everybody's covering that now. So
Are they now in the general liability? Because
Yep.
I know we have it separately. It has to be handled separately. And
but I mean,
also,
like I said, it's generally in the same. I'm not saying you would have separate
Right.
coverage, but it's still.
and it's very
part of
key too. Again, I'm sorry, Paul. It's very key also to take a good look at what they cover. So
Right.
whether it's,
Very
I had a customer that had their phone system hacked, that wasn't covered. So
Yeah.
they had like over the weekend, 60,000 phone calls made, and it was a $6,000 bill, but that wasn't covered. So that's not, it was a theft of services, but not a loss of data. Sorry. So that kind of thing. But so there's you have to look at the coverage that's available. But it's extremely important, and we can certainly help you with that, and help you lower your premiums too, because again, they're going to have guidelines that we can assist you with. Here, do this, 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 and this, and this will lower your exposure, or what we call surface attacks. Your attack surfaces, so that you're not exposed as much as you could be.
And so as Chris was talking, it came to me, most companies can last 3 hours as long as their operational programs, applications are still up and running. So only 3 hours, and then they have to shut down. So again, 60% close after 6 months after a data breach. right? And this can be what causes just from downtime, just from your system not working and functioning properly, all right? So let's go through a couple of case studies. So our first case study is a local CPA firm. They had 8 employees at the time. They came to us in November of 2019, and they had been hacked. How did they get hacked? Any guesses?
Email.
That's right. Customer or employee opened an email. They got clicked on the link or the attachment, ended up with ransomware. All right. Yeah. They were asking for $40,000 in Bitcoin. Bitcoin. That's more expensive than dollars. All right. So here, and again, you got to keep in mind this is November. So for the folks that do taxes, they're 2 months before taxes start, right? So they're panicking. So we came up with some solutions working with them real quick. Chris mentioned about you don't pay the ransomware. 8% of people get their data back once they've paid the ransom. 8% get their data back. So
Back up. Run your backups.
right. So what we did was we got them in touch with one of our vendors, Secure Data, and they were able to decrypt the data that they had, and they paid like $24,000 for that fee. But they saved a lot more money as well, obviously. We got involved with 24/7 monitoring of their network, making sure that their system updates were being done and on time and at the right time. So that, and also letting them know if their server was starting to act up, that they could be more proactive with how they did their maintenance on their system, and avoided the downtime to begin with. We put in an antivirus with detection and response. Chris was talking about cybersecurity insurance. One of the things that cybersecurity insurance, I'll get that straight, requires now is to have an antivirus that does this. Because what happens is the antivirus will detect it, and there's a protocol in place that the software automatically does. So it's not waiting on a human to make that decision. So it increases the security of the network. Email backup and archiving. As a CPA, their emails, and they have to trace their emails and have to go back, sometimes 6-7 years to be able to keep their and find their emails. So this was another solution that we brought to them. So again, you get hacked, you've got a whole other, like Chris is saying, your data is backed up. You've got a whole separate cloud of where all your email is being secured. And obviously cloud backup and disaster recovery. So if you have this in place, you get a ransomware, you're upset, kind of like I was with the van, but it's fixable, right? You just shut it down, and you may be down for a couple hours, but you can get your data back. You're not worried about the data because the data is encrypted. Yes, you can have my data because I've got a whole other copy of it in the cloud. And then also a physical firewall. So I like to give the example of you have the moat around the castle, that's the firewall, and then the locked door, that's your antivirus. All right, so it's a whole nother level of umbrella of security. So we got 100% of their data back. They were very happy about that, as were we. We had everything deployed. They were 100% operational and ready for tax season for their busiest time of year.
How long was that turnaround?
2 months, more like 7 weeks. They've been virus-free now for almost coming up on 4 years, which is nice as well. And they've had a significant reduction in downtime because their network, because again, we've been able to be proactive. We've got a new server in that we loaned them for their QuickBooks. But hey, your server's starting to go bad. Well, we've got to get through tax season. We were able to loan them a server that got them through on QuickBooks, and now they were able to get through tax season without having to worry about that. And the upside, again, adding value to your business, they were able to add two employees because they kept thriving and kept going. So case study number 2 is a little different. This is a startup company. They basically 2 employees. It was a husband and wife team. Wife's working part-time. The husband's doing the job, doing the work. But they weren't very tech savvy, so they needed some hardware and guidance into what they needed to get started, as well as making sure that their stuff was secure and able to continue working. So we were able to give them what we call a kind of a startup package. You know, you have your antivirus, email archiving and backup, which is important to them as well. You want to have your cloud backup. We used a different vendor with Carbonite just because of the size of their business. So again, we can really customize our solutions to what the needs of the business is. We put a physical firewall in and a new laptop. We did that in 7 days. And they were up and running in 7 days. They've been virus free now. Granted, this was July, so they're 3 months, but they're 3 months from the very beginning of their business. They're virus free. They've been happy and being able to continue to get out and drive business and growing the business. And obviously their data is safely backed up. So just a kind of a brief snapshot of what who our vendors are. You can see we have a lot of folks and a lot of brains behind us. And we have a lot of different solutions that we can bring to the table. And again, customize for the individual customer, not here's 3 options, pick one. All right? And that, I believe, is it. Yep. So any questions, Randy?
So maybe tying into my world then and yours then on this, but I've talked with other business brokers around the country who've had cases where in the due diligence period, after a business is under contract and the buyer is looking at the business and wanting to make sure they understand all the financials and so on, that there have been cases where they have part of the due diligence request is, I'm going to send in my IT person to assess the security of your systems.
Yep.
So I haven't had that personally happen yet, but I know that that's out there. So it's becoming more of a issue of concern for potential business owners in the future, also wanting to make sure that the business they're buying is a secure system, that they're not going to have to invest a lot of stuff in, or that they're not at risk on day one.
Right. It's kind of like a home inspector.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So do your IT, because again, you lose your data, you lost the business. You can still go do some of the business, but you're not going to be able to do the entire portion of your business without your data.
How many businesses don't have a computer system?
Right.
Yeah.
So Randy,
Everybody.
what you're saying is that you haven't run across this stuff in your evaluation so much so far,
No.
but that amazes me that
But
it
if I
doesn't
can,
come up.
Yeah.
if I can add into there and say, look, they have a regular maintenance contract with Nerds to Go, or someone who might approach their quality, then they've got that regular contract, then, hey, that's an added feature for the business. But again, many business owners are wanting to check it out for themselves once they're considering buying a business.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still smart to do that, even if they do have a company, that's maintaining their. Ladies first.
Oh.
Michelle.
I probably shouldn't ask this in public because now I'm realizing how dumb these questions are. But I work with really smart people who are new business owners, who are doctors and pharmacists and all these sorts of things.
Yep.
I'm embarrassed. The questions we have, or the discussions we've had, well, if you put your patient data on Google and you sign the BAA, that'll be safe. And if you've got a Mac, they do all the antivirus, you don't need an antivirus. So go
No.
ahead, land back.
That's a big no. That's a misconception. Every system can be hacked. Everyone. Macs are great. They have some more.
They have less code.
No, they have a little more security built in. Remember, Apple is not only does the operating system, they also do the hardware, right? So they're building when you buy a MacBook, they design the chips, but that doesn't mean they can't be hacked. And again, as a hacker, what's more important, going at it over the 75 to 80% of Windows machines on the planet, or the 10 or 15% Macs? Well, they'll go after them anyway, but again, there's more Windows PCs that are out there deployed. But that's, and again, when it comes to cloud-based services, Google, Microsoft, Dropbox, they are not responsible for that. They're not responsible for backing their stuff up. They do. They only go back so far, and that's that. It's really on your shoulders it's your data.
Microsoft's 30 days, that's it.
Right, yeah, Microsoft will
Yeah.
only guarantee your email for 30 days.
Right. Well, they have other stuff to do, but yeah, again, it's actually it's 92 days actually if you go into the archiving and stuff. But again, it comes down to it's your data, it's your responsibility. That's the kind of thing. One of the services that I also provide is data forensics. So we get into that and we do that. I started that in New York. It was mostly for divorce cases. Shocking. But again, the same tools and techniques and things to look at, as you brought up about doing your due diligence of buying a business, is to go in there and make sure that the data and everything that you're looking at or buying, the systems, are secure, that they haven't cooked the books. We can see that too from a data standpoint, not maybe from a financial numbers standpoint, but certainly, oh yeah, the files have been changed or modified or whatever. So those are all part of that security and making sure that you're doing your due diligence.
John?
3 questions. First one, when you say physical firewall, are we talking about hardware versus software?
Correct.
Okay. Second one, does antivirus include anti-malware? Are those used kind of synonymously?
It's kind of some, yeah.
It's all one and the same?
Yep.
And the last one is, how do you protect your backups from getting hacked as well?
Good question.
That is a good question. Well, they have. I'm looking at him to make sure I'm saying this right. But Acronis and Carbonite and all the other folks that do it, they have several different sites across the world, and they have each individual one is encrypted. So even if there's a nuclear bomb that goes off in Colorado and destroys the Midwest, and they've got several other redundant backups. Chris, you want to add?
Yeah. So for backups, you should have your backups in 3 places minimum. I personally have 6 or 7, and so it's like a belt and suspenders kind of situation. A backup is only as good, so 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none, right? So and testing your backups are very important. So I can't tell you how many times we've gone, oh, we back up, and right, you go to back up, and oh, that one doesn't work. And
You go to restore.
But yeah, you go to restore that, yeah, exactly. And so you really have to make sure that okay, it said it backed up. Did it really back up? Are you able to restore? Because that's
So what I'm curious about, there's the DR aspect, which I think that you guys have answered, but if there's a Trojan horse that sits dormant for 30, 60 days,
Right.
and then suddenly time bombs,
right.
that could take out your backups, right?
Well, if the backup is on-prem, so what we normally recommend, my rule of thumb is you should have a couple of backups local, right? But those are very prone to getting infected. The ransomware is excellent at finding every nook and cranny and every machine on the network and getting it. It's unbelievable, and how quickly it can do it too. So you should have off-site backup, not just because of the ransomware, but I had a customer in New York had a fire in their server room, Midtown Manhattan, done. We were back on our feet in 3 days because our backups were gone, our servers were gone. I had crazy pictures. I was like, so 3 floors up and 3 floors down, water damage, 3 floors up that. I've never dealt with so many insurance adjusters in my life. There was 9 of them. It was crazy. But we were back on our feet in 3 days because we ran, got some machines, restored the backup from the cloud, spun them back up, they were back on running. So that was a multi-billion-dollar portfolio management company. So that kind of thing, again, why you should have off-site backups. A meteorite hit your office. Well, you can't go in to get your data, so you need it somewhere. So it's very important, and you should have multiple backups.
So you're saying malware cannot find a cloud instance?
Well, it does. Okay, so in the case of, let's say, Carbonite, or there's a lot of them out there. There's a ton of those backups. Anytime the file is changed, it's a new version. So the encrypted file is changed. So you go to the previous version. So it keeps a certain number of revisions. Dropbox does, Google Drive does, they keep a certain number of revisions. But again, ransomware is getting smarter about that. They'll encrypt it 30 times. So now you've wiped out your 30 versions, right? So you're like, wow, okay. So they're getting very, very clever on how they deal with that. And so that's definitely something to think about. That's why you should have multiple copies.
Todd?
Yeah, so Chris, Paul, one of the trends I'm seeing last 3 to 6 months is vendors pushing towards passwordless login. Can you speak to that versus like just sticking with passwords in MFA?
I've not heard of this.
Yeah, so you're talking about like tokens? Yeah, which are more secure. This is like a thumb drive, and they have your ID
Gotcha,
that rotates
yeah.
it, so it's an actual hardware thing. It's a pain in the ass if you lose it. Excuse my language, but yeah, it's a pain. Two-factor authentication is a must. If you don't have it, and I don't know how many of you here are using Microsoft for your email, probably 365, or most of you, or Google is the other, those, yeah, there you go. So two-factor is a must. You must have it on there. And texting is not very secure, using it as a secondary. Using an authenticator app is way, way better. So text can be spoofed, and they're very good at that too. So there's some pretty crazy, again, this is what I tell all our customers. Your job is to run your business, right? And so their job is to get into your business. That's all they do. That's what hackers do. That's 24/7, that's all they care about, and they're very, very, very good at it. So
And they run it like a business.
And they run it like a business, and they wouldn't do it if there wasn't money to be had.
You only gotta be right once.
Yeah, that's
right.
it, right? So.
Yeah, no, they have employee of the month. They have, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
They have
Preferred parking.
yes,
So-
they have employee parking, employee
Yeah,
perks,
so
absolutely.
They really are out there to get it, and again, it just takes one, So, so having a two-factor is a must, and Microsoft has now, in fact, I'm dealing with a customer, it's actually becoming a problem, where they're forcing two-factor as it's a must. You must have it on all your email accounts. So this is just
Passwordless?
well, really the first step is two-factor. You must have. They weren't enforcing it just recently. Microsoft on 365 is now. You must have two-factor enabled. Have to.
Very
Is
good.
the biologic stuff better than like passwords?
Biometric stuff? Yeah,
Face
so the
ID.
biometric stuff, it's just another method of it. It's not as secure in some ways. I mean, face recognition on the iPhone, there's ways of using like duct tape to get past that.
My
Yeah,
daughter
so-
looks just like me, and our phones think.
Well, so
Right.
that's, again, so there's some things, fingerprints and things like that. There's ways around biometric.
Right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it.
Let's